Hello, and welcome to another episode of Getaway Day. I am sad. He's disappointed. Sorry. I am Mason. He is Gautham. Uh, and I think we're both pretty sad and disappointed today. I don't want to speak for you, but am I pretty on point there?
Yeah, uh, what can I say? No baseball on March 31st. Just a big
Or April 1st, or
or April
April 2nd,
1st.
or 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th. Yeah. That's that's where we're at now. So you may have noticed this is not our typical recording day. It is Tuesday, March 1st, right now. Uh, but all of the, I don't know if I even want to call them negotiations, really.
Whatever
All,
that last week was.
yeah, all of the Jupiter, Florida meetings, that saga is now over. 5 p.m. tonight was the deadline that Major League Baseball had instituted in order for a CBA to be agreed upon to have opening day happen on March 31st. 5 o'clock came and went. There was a lot of drama and no agreement. So at about 5:30, Rob Manfred came out. Very first words out of his mouth after a big smile were, "We are canceling games." If that's not telling that they kind of wanted that, then I don't know what is. Um, yeah, and then the players came out and did their press conference about an hour later. I think it was aired for maybe about 2.5 or 3 minutes on ESPN and MLB Network before they both cut away from it to, I guess, watch reruns of old baseball games and pregame for college basketball. So apparently we all care equally. Woo. I don't think he did see a shadow, mostly because I don't think that demon has a shadow. Um, yeah, very frustrated with Rob Manfred. So today I kind of just want to catch everybody back up on what's happened in the last like 9 days down there in Florida. Should be pretty quick because really the last 36 hours were pretty much most of it. And then just kind of talk about what the last offer was and where we go from here. So does that sound good to you, Gabby?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. So do you want to fill us in on just kind of the progress of the last 10 days, or you want me to do that?
I can give it a shot. Feel free to chime in if I'm missing anything.
All right.
Um, Last Monday feels like a long time ago because um, a lot of stuff has happened, but not really a lot of progress, I guess.
Yeah.
So it started with the first few days they were meeting on a daily basis and just making incremental changes, really just nominal changes from the owner's side. I wish I had the list of like the different moves. I don't really have that accessible right now, but basically the moves that the owners made would just change one thing very slightly, and then at the same time they'd pull some other thing back. So really, it was usually net no change or very minimal change from the previous offer. And then at the same time, the players' side continued to negotiate kind of against themselves. It sort of felt like, as they would make more substantial changes than what the owners were offering up.
All right. So I do have last Monday's proposal pulled up. So MLB increased their pre-arb bonus pool by 5 million. They increased the number of picks in the draft lottery by one, and they withdrew the proposal asking for ability to reduce minor league roster sizes. So that was pretty much all that happened on day one. And then day two was the players' turn, and they responded by decreasing their ask for the bonus pool by $5 million, dropped the picks in the lottery by one, and messed with some of the service Super 2 percentages. They took it from asking for 80% of players to become Super 2s to 75, but increased the minimum salary. So that was kind of that entire first back and forth. So,
Yeah, and I'm not sure if we need to go into each specific day of it, but
yeah.
we can talk about that Super 2 percentage of players that started at 100% from the player side, dropped it down to what did you say, 85%,
80.
then down 80, and then 75.
Yep.
And then on Saturday they dropped that all the way down to 35%.
Yep.
And that was still a non-starter completely for the league. They wanted to stick with the status quo of 22%.
Yep. And for reference, between that kind of Tuesday offer on the 22nd and Saturday, um, there had basically been no big proposal changes. It had been just this back and forth, little tiny move. Saturday was kind of the first time that someone said, "All right, you're not going to make the first move. We will." And that's when the players went and back down to 35, which apparently ticked off the owners. Shocker. So
Yeah.
like, who would have thought it would be that easy to piss off Dick Bonfort?
Um, I don't know.
Is it easier to piss off Dick Monfort or to piss me off by mentioning his name?
Probably you, to be honest,
Yeah,
but
that's probably
close.
fair.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so then let's see what else happened on Saturday's offer, because there was a couple other things on top of the Super 2. Um,
Was that the day that the players also dropped their ask on the CBT as well? Or was that still the same at that point?
so it included moves to the CBT, arbitration eligibility, and revenue sharing. Um, so that went down to the 35%. Here, let's find this thread. And then that was also when it was also whenever they came out and said, okay, we will do expanded playoffs, 12 teams. And then the players moved the CBT by the same amount that the owners had in the previous offer. So they moved it $2 million in 3 different years. So yeah, so it was more on the CBT. It was just more of that tiny back and forth incremental. But that was kind of the first big thing that we saw with the arbitration eligibility for Super 2 players.
Right. Yeah. And that was that's always been one of the union's biggest priorities in this negotiation round is to get those players that have a low number of years of service time paid earlier, and the league is really not wanting to hear that. They do not want to budge
Yeah,
on that at
yeah, and
all.
so something you may have noticed, the league said, "Okay, we'll increase the minimum salary," which the minimum salary increases pretty much every CBA, just because, I mean, that's how the world works. Most people get some small raise every year or two to just kind of keep up with inflation and all that.
And this is
Um,
a substantial raise. We can point that out. Like
well, yeah,
what they have.
that was going to be my next point, but I think this or MLB realized that they had to give a pretty substantial increase and came up to like 650,000 versus the $570,250 I think that the minimum salary was in 2021. And that was on Saturday. Like, it came up since then, but um that's a lot more of a cost controlled, you know what you're getting yourself into with that. Whereas if you start introducing arbitration to more players for another year, you have no idea what's going to happen with that money. So some of them, like Acuna, in his first year of arbitration, would have been paid, I don't know, maybe $3 million based on how arbitration tends to work. But he would only be 750,000 maybe he was not a Super 2. So that's kind of the entire reason that the owners were going about increasing the minimum salary substantially and not touching arbitration at all, because they want to know what their costs are and be able to hold those down. So it was a calculated risk to give everyone more money to hold some of the expensive guys back. Let's see here. So then what was kind of the next thing? So basically from then, we had a lot of back and forth. So we had never seen 3 meetings in the same day until I think Saturday. And then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then today, we had multiple meetings every day. And there was stuff going back and forth. We had some pretty good progress and got where they were maybe 15-20% apart as opposed to 80 or 90% apart. Does that seem about fair?
I don't know. I guess it's hard for me to put a percentage on it because regardless of what the deal is, it's a very owner friendly. No matter what, even if it's the very first offer that the players offered, it's pretty good for the owners.
Yeah. So I guess we could talk about the intermediate proposals for a long time, but let's just get right to kind of the drama of the last couple days, because I think that's kind of where it starts to affect, um, uh, well, the players, the owners, the fans. We start seeing an effect on anyone who's even remotely around baseball, whether their business is just next door to a stadium. The last 36 hours is kind of what everyone was looking at, because that's the do or die time. So basically on Monday at what was it? Monday night. I don't think there was a time with it, right? It was just Monday night was the deadline.
And yeah, it's important to note that it's not like a real deadline. It's just a deadline that was imposed by MLB kind of as a threat, and
Yeah.
uh, there was no real deadline. And obviously, they moved it to Tuesday when they seemed like they were making progress on Monday night.
And set a time with it so that they could then set a press conference time. Which is really the only reason why there was a 5 p.m. deadline today, is because they had already scheduled a 5:30 press conference. If the players had accepted the offer, then fantastic. But Manfred had his tea time this morning, so he had to get to that, and then showed up at 5:30 to hear the no, they didn't take it, and then went out to the podium. I can't believe he did that. He legitimately went to the driving range instead of going to the meetings today. Like, there's pictures of it.
I thought he was just like doing a golf swing in the stairwell.
I didn't think so. I thought he
I
was
don't think he
at.
was at it. I don't think so.
Was he not?
No,
Maybe.
I think people are just making something out of nothing. Also, the smiling at the press conference, it's really not like someone asked him a question and it was just a little moment of awkwardness.
He.
Like
Yeah.
I'm not reading into it. I think people are just mad, and I understand that, but like those are not the things that I'm mad at Manfred for.
Yeah. I mean, that's not the reasons I'm mad at Manfred, but it's fun to point out.
Yeah,
Like,
fair enough.
you got to admit, the dude does not know how to read a room. Because some of the jokes that he was trying to make to kind of get through those awkward points, he really should just let the awkwardness simmer. It would be so
Yeah,
much better. Because
he's
there
really
was the.
not a people pleaser.
Did you hear the comment whenever he's like, "I'm not gonna miss you guys," and the reporter just goes, "Yeah, feelings mutual," and
No, I didn't watch the press conference.
it was
I just read the
funny.
quotes. So
It was funny. Um, but yeah, so basically, MLB instituted this deadline of last night. Talks were going, were reportedly going very, very, very well last night. We were pretty close to a deal. Went till 2 a.m. There was back and forth. And when I say we were pretty close to a deal, there were exactly 2 guys who were saying we were close to a deal: Bob Nightingale, John Heyman. You know anything about baseball reporting? Those are the 2 guys you should never listen to. I think Bob is actually the profile picture on the pictures that precede unfortunate events Twitter page. Which, oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, both those guys, they have very strong ties with some of the owners, and they seem to get a lot of their information directly from the owner's mouth of what they should put out to hundreds of thousands of people.
yeah. And so last night was kind of the first time in a long time that Bob Nightingale had good press. People were loving him. We all wanted there to be a deal last night, and the fact
Yeah,
that they were
everyone
still
just wanted to
negotiating,
believe.
and the fact that they were still negotiating at 2 a.m. had people believing it was close. And then this morning, before this stuff starts happening, you start hearing from Evan Drellich, from Jeff Passan, from Jesse Rogers, from um, a whole bunch of different reporters that are not Heyman and Bob Nightingale, that we are nowhere close to a deal. So you start seeing, okay, this is a little funny. The two guys with ties to the owners are saying we're close, and everyone else is saying we're not. What's going on here? And then, sure enough, later on, Bob and John start saying this is disastrous, and started they started calling out that the tone of the players had changed, um, which I think was kind of the point that Major League Baseball was trying to make for about the last 24 hours, is trying to put the onus of this entire situation onto the players, because up until now, a large portion, maybe not the majority, but a large portion of baseball fans has been blaming the owners. I mean, they implemented the lockout as a precautionary tactic when it was their turn to propose um, an offer, and then they waited 42 days before they put forth any kind of an offer. And then it was a lot of that piddly million here, million there, when you're talking a couple $100 million. So uh yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. And so I guess, what is your thoughts kind of on the MLB's tactic to kind of spin this against the players?
Honestly, it's shameful. It's I don't know what to say really. It's just how can you negotiate with people that don't really care about losing the games? Like that, where's the how can you negotiate really? If so, like even if you go back to 2020 and 2021, 2020 with the pandemic season, they wanted less games, and that was a big point of contention between them and the players association. Then in 2021, they also didn't want to start spring training on time because of the COVID. Their reasoning was because of the COVID restrictions and vaccination rollout and things like that. So the owners have kind of showed over the last few years that playing all the games is not one of their priorities.
Yeah, and then even a couple days ago, they tripled down on it. They basically said, I think in a meeting on Saturday, that they are willing to miss. I don't know why I've got that down. They're willing to miss an entire month of games.
Yeah,
They said that on Saturday. Like, we still had what, 2 days before their imposed deadline, and they're just saying, yeah, we'll miss about 20 games. Coincidentally, that 20 games is the 20 least profitable games of the season. And as long as we're playing about 140 games a year, the owners still make a profit on the season typically. So they're cutting out all the extra stuff where they're still going to get their money. They're still going to get all the excess cash from TV deals, sponsors, all that good stuff. Um, and they pressure the people with less money into taking a deal that's not favorable to them, which, from a
yeah,
negotiating standpoint, great tactic. As a fan, I hate them all.
yeah. It's crazy that they are I mean, we haven't really gone over that final proposal fully yet, but the differences between the two sides are so small that it's clear that the money is really not the issue. It's more the just want to crush everything that the union stands for, and they do not care about the risk that it puts on the sport as a whole.
Yeah, there was a quote that I saw earlier from an anonymous player, and I would pull it up and read it verbatim, but I don't remember which reporter tweeted it. But it essentially said, uh, at this point, it's a morality thing. The baseball business is absolutely booming. Like, baseball's making more money than ever before. Even at the status quo, like, technically the players are still making more money, but they've been screwed over time and time again, and they're not going to let it happen a third time in a row. So even though the differences are seemingly minimal, um, they got all of, or basically all, the infrastructure they've asked for in the most recent proposal, which we'll go over here in a minute. But the money isn't there. So they have the structure, they don't have the numbers that go with it that make it make sense, and the owners are just trying to squeeze every last penny out of them. And at this point, they're fed up with it. So, I mean, I get it. I get why they didn't accept it. I probably
Yeah,
wouldn't have either.
I'm I'm I guess I'm happy that the union is standing strong still. They did not give in, and it doesn't really seem like they're going to, at least right now.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see what happens, because, like I mentioned, we got about 20 games that can be canceled before the owners start feeling it hit their pocketbook. Are we going to basically get to May 1st before there's any kind of a deal so that they don't lose any revenue? Or are we going to get a little sooner than that? They get a little bonus revenue and we see what happens.
Yeah, that's the question, and it really comes down to. I guess it comes down to, can they afford it or not.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer
Yeah,
to that
and
question.
with some of the players making, well, I guess it depends what the minimum salary is, but I guess it really doesn't, because it's the money they already have saved up. Players that have been around for a couple of years, excuse me, if they've saved their money, may have $100,000 sitting around. Maybe. I don't know how they all run their money, but anyone who's been around less than that has a very, very small fraction of that saved up, most likely. Because when you're in the minors, you're making a maximum of $12,000 a year playing AAA.
I did see
So
that the MLBPA is going to be giving out $15,000 stipends starting on April 1st.
I
So
I think there's a $5,000 stipend on March 1st today,
yeah,
and then there's a $15,000 on April 1st, and then I think that pretty much depletes all the money that they had sitting aside for this type of situation.
I'm not sure about that because it's not necessarily for every player. It's just for whoever wants to apply for it.
Gotcha. So it's kind of a need based system.
Yeah, it's like Max Scherzer doesn't need this stipend, of course.
Yeah. We'll see if he applies, though. He might. I mean, he's got to pay for his Porsche somehow, right?
Yeah, of
AP made
course.
a big deal about that. Yeah. So, but the funny thing is, like, they made a big deal about Max driving in his Porsche Panamera, and completely ignored the fact that an owner had set down a helicopter on one of the practice fields. It's like $200,000 car, $5 million helicopter. Yeah, let's call out the car. But oh well. Um, what were we talking about before I talked about the car?
No idea.
Yeah, I lost it too. Um, I don't know what we were talking about. Huh.
We can get into that, what the final proposal is, and just talk about the differences between the two sides.
All right, so we'll go piece by piece, just because it'll be easier for me to track this way. So, um, just a this is just the little summary blurb. So this part isn't the car isn't a tax deductible expense. Darn, I was hoping it would be. Um, yeah, so this is just kind of a blurb summarizing some of the money that would have come from this MLB offer. According to an MLB.com writer, so there might be some bias in there. There might not be. Take what you will out of it. So MLB's offer includes nearly $500 million over the course of the CBA and additional compensation benefiting nearly 2/3 of MLB players. 23% increase in minimum salary and the creation of the first ever pre-arb bonus pool at $30 million. Every pre-arb player would make more than in the last CBA. So that's the blurb. Now let's get into how that happens. So the MLB has proposed raising the minimum salary from, what did I say it was earlier? $570,150 or something like that, to $700,000 in 2022, and then escalating by $10,000 every year until 2026, which brings us up to $740,000 in 2026. So, $570,500 in 2021. My bad. I was off by $150 or $250. Yeah, so that's what, an increase in $129,500. So good, bad thoughts on that piece.
I mean, that's definitely a key. I'd say that's a key win for the players that they're getting that increase in minimum salary. It's really huge for the over 50% of the league that has been on that league minimum the last 2 full years, and I think it's 52% in 2019 and 2021 that were on the minimum salary. So to get that boost is very significant.
Yeah, and the player's most recent offer was $725,000, and then stepping up by $20,000 each year, which would have brought us to $840,000 in the final year. It sounds like a big difference if just at face value, but I do think either way, this is probably not the piece that is making the players say no. I think in general, that is a huge raise. It's actually the highest raise ever between CBAs. And that's over double the increase from 2016 to 2021 in a single year. And then it still increases by 10 in the next couple of years. So I think the players were probably pretty happy with that part. Then again, I'm not a player, so maybe not. But so there was an extra note here. Oh wait, lol. The thing I was trying to find was literally the next tweet. So that increase is larger than the aggregate increase in minimum over the last 10 years. So from 2012 to 2021, there was a total increase of $90,500. So 10 years, $90,500 increase. Between 21 and 22, we're talking $130,000. That is not something to bat your eyes at. And the salary is not fixed, so teams and players can agree to a higher amount consistent with how it currently goes. So year 2, year 3, you can still get your raises.
Yeah, so I just thought of this just now. I wonder if that minimum salary being the thing that the league actually addressed is something that they've done to put on people's Twitter feeds to show them, hey, look at these guys, they're making this much money, and that's the minimum salary in MLB. And that's the thing that everyone sees. And your casual guy is going to say, wow, that's crazy. That baseball player is getting paid so much money.
To quote unquote play a child's game.
Right.
Yeah, no, I'm 100%. I think that's the reason. Well, it's one of two reasons. The other reason is more knowing what your costs are going to be each year, as opposed to giving it up in arbitration, like I said earlier. But yeah, no, so just if I were to click on these tweets right now and read you the replies on any of them, coupling it with the fact that MLB made sure to pipe out how close to a deal we were yesterday, people that don't pay attention quite as closely as we do are furious with the players right now. And so it honestly kind of hurts me a little bit to click on these and read it, because you see a lot of of that whole they're getting paid $570,000 to play a child's game. I'm making X to do Y. And it's like, okay, I get that you're frustrated with your job. I don't make what they do. I wish I made what they did. I don't. I understand why. I'm not the commodity that my business is selling. I'm not the reason that they're making tens of billions of dollars a year selling my name, my face, my skill directly to a consumer. Anything that I do goes through 800 levels of things before it ever gets to an end user. So I get it.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation, I guess. But I still don't know if it's going to convince Joe Schmo like out there that is yelling that these guys make so much money.
It won't. And I'm not here to convince Joe Schmo. I'm here to convince someone who's willing to listen. But if they're listen and um, actually maybe change their mind based on a new perspective, that's why I'm here. Because honestly, this is a very depressing topic to be talking about. I would rather talk about anything but this because I've seemed very frustrated, I think, this entire time. And it's probably just going to get worse as we keep talking. But I think it's important to talk through this and explain to people who maybe don't pay attention as much exactly what's happening because people are going to put the onus of this on the players.
And that's the thing about it. It's not simple. It's very complicated. All these issues are related to each other, and you when you give one thing, you're taking something else back, and it becomes very difficult to track exactly where things stand and who's coming out on top. So hopefully we can try to parse through it and give you that information.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I think you're exactly right though. The minimum salary going up as much as it did is directly a PR move. Um, it's a PR move that greatly benefits a lot of players. So we can't be mad at it. We could be mad that they're using it as a scapegoat to maybe not do as much as they should. Um, which brings us to the next topic, the pre-arbitration bonus pool. So I'll explain what it is in theory, and then I'll mention the number that they're throwing out there. So in theory, or actually, do you understand this one better than I do? If so, you explain it.
Yeah, so if I'm understanding this one correctly, this is a pool for players that are what service class are these players?
Pre-arb. So years 1 through 3.
Okay, so yeah, the pre-arbitration players will all get um well, they don't all get it, right? Maybe I'm not the right person
Oh,
to ask
okay.
about this.
So I'll take this one then. So basically, the entire point of this is uh, you have players like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., like Ronald Acuna Jr., that come up in years 1 through 3. They're making league minimum or pretty close to it unless they sign a big contract. These guys are making the league tens of millions of dollars a year. Vlad in year 3 this year, right?
Year
Um,
4.
came in second in the MVP. And probably would have won it in any year that Shohei Ohtani did not do what he did. And he made what, $700,000, 800,000.
Yeah.
So the pre-arb bonus pool is targeting players like him that are bringing in a lot of excess value compared to what they're getting paid, and it's just trying to pay them a bonus if they are rookie of the year, if they finish in Cy Young or MVP voting, if they are, I think by WAR is how they're
I,
doing it.
I I thought this one was, did they ever agree on what the rules were? But I thought it was like the top 30 players by war or something like that.
Well, so it's actually top 150. The if a player is in the top 10 out of all major leagues, then they're in this group, or top 10 of their position in the major leagues, or top 15 if you're outfield or something like that. Um, and then a couple other stipulations that bring us to a total of 150 players a year, and they will get a bonus on top of their league minimum salary to help offset the extra revenue that they're bringing in for essentially free um, to the league. And so um, that's what this is geared or aimed to do. This is something that the players asked for directly. The owners heard their explanation and kind of just went, "Yeah, we can't really say no to this," and get and be okay in the public's eyes. So they said, "Okay." Now, where we start getting into a little bit of a issue is the players were asking for $120 million split across 150 players. The league originally was offering $10 million split across 30 players. The league came up to $30 million now for 150 players. So at most, you're looking at $333,000 a year to each one of these players.
And it
When you
really wouldn't be
have
like that, right? Would it be evenly split like that, or probably top loaded? Like,
Probably not, but if you were just to average it, just for argument's
yeah,
sake, because like you're gonna have a guy like Vlad that comes out and puts up a, what did he have, like a 7 WAR season? So that's $42 million worth of value if you're going $7.5 million per WAR. It'd be more than that, but um, so yeah, so but if you average it out, you're looking at a third of $1 million per player when they're making league minimum. So you're really not paying them what they're worth. They're getting a small bonus, but it's not much. When you're at $120 million, you're giving almost every person $1 million on average. That's a lot of money, especially for these really young players, and it's not going to be split evenly. But by the end of today, the players had come down to 85 million, and the owners are at 30. So that's kind of where we're at. We have a $55 million gap split across 150 players. So,
I mean, yeah, that really shouldn't be hard to bridge that gap. I feel like that this one also should not have been one of the biggest roadblocks, I think, of all the issues.
yeah, I do personally believe that the owners kind of need to come, like maybe they could split it halfway from where they're at now, but there needs to be some movement from that 30, in my opinion. Um, but then again, that's why I'm not negotiating this. So, the next piece is trying to address service time manipulation. So, 2015, you want to explain the Chris Bryant thing? I know you know that one.
Yeah, so Chris Bryant, top prospect in 2015 and before, and uh, Cubs did not have him break camp with the team despite him hitting like 7 home runs in spring training, absolutely looking like a superstar that could really help the Cubs that year. And they sent him down to AAA Iowa for defense work. And then he comes up the first day eligible to have another year of control by the Cubs. Um,
Yeah.
so that's like he's the star case of service time manipulation.
Yeah. So basically, you had to be on a major league roster for 172 days in order to get a year of service time. Chris Bryant was brought up so that he could only get 171 days. And then he filed an appeal and lost his appeal somehow, which I still don't understand. But so MLB decided they're going to try and rectify that. So to do that, they're going to give the top 2 finishers in Rookie of the Year voting in their league full year of service time. In sentence, move on to the next point.
That is just not remotely covering the spread of service time manipulation. Chris Bryant in that case would have been awarded the full year of service time because you won the Rookie of the Year that year. But there's so many other players that get treated this way that are not at Chris Bryant's caliber of player.
Well, and even if they are, but they just have like a bad week or two and that knocks him out of the top two rookie of the year, then they're screwed.
Yeah, I
Like
think this is a good time to bring up Edward Olivares. We were looking him up the other week, and the guy got sent up and down between Kansas City and Omaha AAA 11 times during the 2021 season. So his pay was all messed up. His service time, he's not really accruing much of it. In that time, he only had some 100 something plate appearances in 11 different stints with the big league club. So that's
that
service time manipulation, but it's a lot different than
that
Chris
one was
Bryant.
also addressed. They offered an option limit of 5 options per season per player. So he would have had way less travel bills this time. Um, that's just a minor point, but that is also in this offer. Um, but yeah, and Jared Kelnick, granted, when he came up last year, he struggled a lot and got sent down justifiably. But we had the situation in the offseason the year before where the former GM of the Mariners came out in a, what was it, like an American Legion meeting or something for just the
I think
city
it
of
was the
Seattle?
Rotary Club.
Yeah, the city of Seattle Rotary Club, and was just saying how you're going to see these guys on this date make their major league debut, so that we could
and
get them
that
for an extra year.
and that Kelnick didn't agree to a long-term contract extension, so they weren't going to bring him up
Yeah,
until
whereas
after the
Evan
date.
White did, so he was up. And then there was also the stuff with Julio and how he doesn't speak English, even though he does very well, probably better than me. Um, that was just a problematic day in general. But um, yeah, I don't think giving 4 players a full year of service time is even remotely going to affect that, because who's it gonna get up on opening day? It's gonna get Bobby Witt Jr., Adley Rutschman. Anyone else?
Well, I mean, think about it from the club's perspective. If that rule is in place, maybe you still don't bring them up, or you you do something weird and like send them down at the end of the year so they don't win Rookie of the Year. I don't even know. Like, there are other ways that that could be manipulated in itself.
Yeah, and that's something that teams always do. They get a new CBA, they figure out how can we maximize our value with the CBA, and it's crappy, but they do it. And I mean, if you were given a set of rules and said make the best team for as long as you can, you'd probably look into it too. But um,
Yeah.
I don't know. You got any other thoughts on service time manipulation?
No, I just have something on what you just said there that made me think. So, in the last CBA in 2017, I didn't follow it too closely. I knew it was going on, but there wasn't quite the struggle because they agreed to it well before the deadline and everything. So I think they agreed to it before the last CBA even expired. But now I'm realizing, and this is clearly not our favorite topic to talk about, but it's so important for the way the baseball is played, and it really affects everything in terms of the strategies that the teams take. And it's really important that the players, I guess, get it right this time, or at least get moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think that's part of that whole morality of it all that anonymous player had mentioned. Like at some point, it affects how the game is played. I mean, that's why tanking came into play in 2012 when that CBA essentially made it so that you benefited from losing games.
Yeah,
Um, and there still being no penalty on um, cutting your payroll to essentially nothing. Um, it gave every incentive for the Cubs and the Astros to go and tank, and then they won World Series in back-to-back years. We've seen other teams try it since, and they've not been nearly as successful, which is both props to those two teams and also shame on them for showing that that's a thing that could be done.
I don't even say shame on them. Like they're they have to operate the way that they can be most successful under the rules of the current CBA. So I don't
Yeah.
really blame the teams necessarily and the people running the teams, for example. I blame the owners for sure.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like the
Yeah.
owners and the team, kind of to me, are synonymous. Even though your front office is not always agreeing with your owner, but um,
As we just saw with the Jeter situation, I think, which
yeah,
I don't know if we want to open that can of worms right now,
that's a
but
whole nother hour, I think.
yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. It's definitely something that they need to get the CBA right, and
And
there's no
I don't think
right,
there's been enough to address the service time manipulation at all, or the anti-tanking measures. Obviously, they have the draft lottery in place, but
which is the
that's
next piece I was coming to. Um,
yeah. Go ahead.
so the draft lottery, the league is proposing the top 5 picks being in the okay. So draft lottery is top 5 picks, equal odds for the bottom 3 records in the league. Teams that receive revenue sharing are ineligible to be in the lottery 3 consecutive years. Teams that pay into revenue sharing are ineligible to be in it consecutive years, which basically would discourage the Cubs from tanking, but not the Pirates. Um, Ineligible teams cannot pick higher than 8th overall. So it helps to a point, because I think the Orioles have picked top 3 like the last 3 years, right?
Yep.
So basically, the Orioles would not be allowed to pick second overall or whatever they are this year. They would have to pick at best 8th overall, um, which does help kind of distribute some prospects a bit, but doesn't really do a ton to um, encourage them not to tank, because I don't know if they pay or get paid in revenue sharing, but like the Pirates, if they tank, then they're going to get 2 number 1 picks potentially, or 2 top 3 picks, and then the 8th overall pick in three
And
consecutive years.
the thing you're kind of dancing around is that revenue sharing, which is basically a way for the teams to still be profitable despite not being anywhere competitive on a baseball field, which just seems wrong to me. It is wrong, and the competition is the biggest thing that needs to somehow be brought back into this. They need to be penalized for not being competitive, basically, and this doesn't do enough of that, in my opinion, because they're still making huge profits.
Yeah, and there's still no salary floor or anything to that effect being talked about here. And I mean, you could use CBT all you want to keep the Dodgers and the Yankees from overspending, but the CBT is never going to encourage the Pirates, the Rays, the A's, the Guardians, the Royals, the who else am I missing? That's never anywhere close to CBT levels. I mean, the Cardinals are never close, but they're always 160, 170 million. Like that's at least trying to spend some money. The Reds
Yeah,
spend some money here and there. The Brewers don't really spend a ton, but
is the CBT the next thing on the list there?
there is one more thing about draft. So thank you for bringing me back. So teams would receive selections after the first round of the um, June amateur draft, or I guess July now, but and the international draft is the only mention of an international draft, by the way. They've completely skirted talking about it. They're trying to slip that one in there. That doesn't exist and shouldn't exist. Um, so selections after the first round of the amateur and international drafts for promoting top prospects to opening day rosters. So maybe that does get you the 30 top prospects to the major leagues every year. Maybe if they're ready. Um, and then you get a amateur draft pick if you have the rookie of the year, and a top three in the MVP or Cy Young voting for those top prospects. And an international selection for second or third in Rookie of the Year, or top five MVP or Cy Young for those top prospects. So that is something that I think the players did ask for, was some kind of incentive to bring people up and let them play. And if they're really good, okay, you could have another pick, sure. So that one
I
I'm
think
fine
I
with.
actually, yeah, I missed that in my initial read through, but that sounds pretty good actually.
The only part of it that I don't like is that they casually slipped in international draft.
Oh yeah, yeah, that is not great. That's horrible for all the international players, many coming from really poor countries. Basically, are going to miss out on their chance to, get a big payday um, in a draft format. Where there will be certainly um, limited to like some sort of slot value.
Well, and they're already limited by what teams have in international bonus money. So
That
there's
too, yeah.
already limitations on what they can make. Granted, it's a little bit less strict than the amateur
Right, yeah.
draft.
But
But
it's been getting stricter and stricter, and
what did Oscar Colas get from the White Sox? Do you know?
oh, he got a lot, right? He got a
Yeah,
pretty
he
big
he
bonus.
got a lot, but like he's almost the exception than he is the rule.
I want to say it was like 4 million or something.
Yeah, that sounds right. Um, but yeah, so that's in here. That's actually one of the pieces that I'm completely fine with. I love that. I don't have any qualms except for the extra draft that they forget to mention casually in any other message here. Um, okay, now we're at the CBT though.
Okay.
I'll just let you run with this one.
All right. So I'll ask for those numbers though. So what
Uh,
were the numbers
MLB
given
or
by the
players?
MLB offer?
Okay, MLB 220, 220, 220, 224, 230.
Okay. So those are the values for each of the 5 years of this upcoming CBA. The 2021 number was 210 million. So that's barely any increase from that.
Yeah, so you have a 5% increase over the last CBA,
Yeah.
which I would
And
like to just casually mention in 2022 so far, we've seen 7% inflation.
okay, so there you go. There's some context, and the CBT was put into place so that so it would rise as revenues have risen. So basically, in the last 10 years or so, the revenues have reached unprecedented levels. Baseball is doing great. It's a $10 billion industry, yet the CBT is barely moving like it used to. In I can give some numbers from JJ Cooper at Baseball America. He's talking about the comparison to the CBT to the NBA salary cap and the NFL salary cap. This is not a salary cap, but it is similar because teams are kind of treating it as a soft cap right now. So the NFL salary cap increased from between 2011 and 2022 by 56%. The NBA salary cap increased by 91.5%, and the MLB proposed CBT increase is 16.4%. So nowhere close to those other sports that actually have a cap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the argument here is that with the luxury tax, you're not limited to spend only to the tax or only to the first threshold because you could spend more. You just get taxed at what has previously been and then is finally back down to 20% for the first 20 million over, I think. And then
Okay.
32% for the 21 to 40 million over. But only in that $20 million is that tax rate. It's just like your tax bracket for your income taxes and stuff. And then if you're 41 million or higher, 62.5% on anything you're over there. Um,
Plus the draft pick losses, which are I think still part of the offer.
for I think
The
two
the
and
second
three.
and the third, yeah, second and
Yeah.
third thresholds. So that's a big deal. Like no team is going to want to be giving up their second round picks basically to spend over that number. So it is treated like a hard cap. And
Yeah, and
the next
in
thing,
2021, you had two teams go over the cap or over the threshold. They did not go to tier two, so they did not
yeah,
lose a pick. And then you had, I think, 7 teams that all came within $3 million of that threshold.
right.
It's ridiculous. It's a cap. That's what it is. But
And going back to that proposal, so we were talking earlier, the first 3 years they proposed the same number, so no increase, 220, 220, 220. I mean, how can they justify that as uh, acceptable?
yeah, each team increases in value by about $120 million a year, or $150 million a year, or something for the last 10 years, and they're not putting any of that towards player salaries for 3 years. And I already mentioned we're seeing unprecedented inflation right now, which I mean, we're not always going to have that. It's going to come back to normal, but either way, you still have inflation every year. It's usually around 2 to 3%, not 7, but 0 is not 2 to 3. Like, you're just deflating player values. As inflation goes up, they're making less and you're spending the same amount, so you're spending less technically.
Right. And getting back to the revenues point, I think someone had calculated that if the CBT was actually increasing with league revenues in 2021, the CBT first threshold would have been something like 270 million. So the players offer, which was what,
238, and then add
238.
7 million every year.
So already that is a little bit. It's not really in line with what it should be if they're kind of treating the CBT the way it was supposed to be treated.
Yeah. Is that going back all the way to 2002 when it was created, or
Uh,
just to 2016?
so it did grow a lot more from 2002 at the inception to like 2011, but in the last couple CBAs, it's not really
But
moved
that
that much.
278 or whatever you said, is that based on 2002 levels or 2016
Uh,
as, or
that I don't know.
2011 maybe?
I don't know the answer to that. I
Yeah.
don't remember.
Because I would be curious to see how that would affect it if you looked at based on the last CBA, the last two, and then the last four. Um, but yeah, let's see. We got anything else on CBT, or we want to press forward because we still got a couple more things.
Uh, yeah, let's go ahead.
All right. Removing all draft pick compensation for free agents. In other words, no more qualifying offer system. Just throw it out the window. Love it.
Yeah, they need that. That's
They need it.
very
That should
important.
have
Yeah.
happened a very long time ago. I think that's a very minor thing for the teams to give up, because really it's not so much like you don't gain a pick, you just don't lose a pick. So why would they be upset? So throw it out the window. Other items in the MLB offer. Universal DH.
Everyone agrees on it, and it's really not that big of a deal.
12-team postseason.
That's a big deal, and this is one I don't think we've really talked on this subject, but they were trying to trade adding postseason slots for some of these really minor issues, like the was it the draft lottery?
I think so. I think
Yeah,
it was
so
more picks in the draft lottery.
it was like a couple additional picks in the draft lottery, which is potentially valueless for the union for something that's very easily quantifiable um, in the postseason money that ESPN would pay the league, which would be $85 million for a 12-team postseason, $100 million for a 14-team postseason, just for that additional round. of playoffs.
Yeah, not to mention literally all of the other revenue that comes from playoff games.
Yeah.
That's just the TV rights. Um, yeah, and honestly, I don't like the fact that they're going to expand postseason at all. I like the 10 team format. The only change that I want to make is to the wild card. I would like it to be a 3 game series, and then I think it's perfect. Don't mess with it. I get that they're going to have to give up a couple of extra teams in there to get some of the other stuff they want, but I'm glad that they're stopping at 12 and not 14.
Yeah, that's definitely better. And I hope if it does become 12, there was an idea floated about having kind of a series where the worst team would have to win an extra game in that initial series, so they'd be basically down in the series by 1 game without even having played a game. They use this format in the KBO, and it seems to work really well. I really like that idea.
Yeah, the way it was explained to the public was not very good though. So people hated it when they just called it a ghost win and didn't really explain anything. Um, but
Classic.
yeah, shocker, they didn't explain something well. It's not like that's why we're here. um, all right. The last 2 things that Mark Feinsand listed are pretty small. Increase in pension payments to retired players and improvements to healthcare benefits for players and families. Always a good thing. And then $23 million in some change in extra amateur spending. So I think that goes towards the bonus
Draft
slots,
slots.
draft slots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a huge increase there, but it's an increase nonetheless. Eh. So that's the last thing that was included in this agreement, according to MLB's sources, or like their people. There were also a couple of rule changes that were thrown in casually at the last minute, which I think were what, pitch clocks.
Pitch clocks, banning the shift, and larger bases. So 2 of those being pretty like substantial changes to gameplay.
Yeah, just casually throw them in the agreement and not tell anybody that you're putting them in there.
Yeah.
Seems like a
I
great
mean,
idea.
just
Um,
just
ultimately, I think they'll
baffling.
be in the big leagues at some point. They were just trying to squeak them in now as opposed to later.
Yeah.
But that was in there. Um, so I don't know how much longer we want to talk on this tonight, but there is kind of one more piece that has to do with the press conferences later that I want to talk about before we go. So is there anything else in the actual offer you want to mention?
Um it's hard to see the players taking a really good deal. Like they're not going to get the deal that they're looking for at all.
Yeah, they're literally never
Unfortunately.
going to get it. But this offer, in your unexperienced, don't know really the business of baseball that well, what do you think of this offer?
I don't think it's good. Like it's not a good offer.
The way I've described it, and I've now used this analogy a couple times today, is a gas station is only good when you can afford the gas. So the infrastructure is there, I think, for the most part. Um, but there are some small pieces that either aren't there or are have been squeaked in by Major League Baseball that don't really make sense, don't really work. But then from the money standpoint, the CBT, the bonus pool money, it's not there for this to be a worthwhile thing for the union in its current offer format. It's like going to the gas station and gas being $800 a gallon and you have a 5 in your pocket. Like, it doesn't make sense to build that gas station if you know you can't afford its product. So that's kind of how I see this particular offer.
And yeah, and ultimately it's a lot of status quo with some little tweaks here and there, and it's really not the big sweeping changes that the players were going for when they started out.
Yeah.
They really haven't addressed any of like huge issues that can really affect the way that the teams act. I don't think there's much difference from what we've had.
Yeah. So I guess the next part is kind of what's the next steps. And the best spot to start with that is like what both sides said in their press conferences. Rob Manfred came out about 30 minutes after the self imposed deadline to say basically, I hoped against hope. I don't know what that means. How do you hope against hope? Is that like a double negative? Does it cancel out?
You got to be commissioner to know.
Clearly. I hoped against hope that it wouldn't come to this and I wouldn't have to cancel games, but I'm canceling 6 games. Just casually, first thing he said. And then about 3 minutes into his rant that made no sense and just made me mad, quite frankly, said something about how the fans' interest is and has been our number one priority. Not, it doesn't seem like that to us. But okay, if that's how your sociopathic mind has to process this, sure, you do you. But the thing that really stood out to me is he basically said, or he was asked in the Q&A when they're going to start to negotiate next. And he said, I don't know. The MLBPA is already on the plane to New York. We won't be able to meet with them until at least Thursday. Fast forward an hour, MLBPA has 30 people at their press conference, 3 buildings down the block. Still in Jupiter, Florida. Still there. The first thing they said is, yeah, contrary to what Rob Manfred said in his press conference earlier, we're still here. We're still willing to negotiate as soon as tomorrow. Just tell us where to meet you and we'll be there to talk. And then I believe Manfred got on his plane and went back to New York and just kind of tried to put that on the players while ESPN and MLB Network cut all coverage of the MLBPA press conference. So no one heard that unless they were specifically trying to watch it on a different thing.
I don't get why ESPN would do that though.
I don't either. I
I
guess
mean, I understand
so.
that MLB Network is trying to control the narrative there, but
I think they had a Duke game and
ESPN
they
should
make way
be.
more money on Duke. I mean, honestly, I think that's what it is because I think that's what the pregame was that came on. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, Manfred said a lot of other things in that press conference that were just not true. Like they're just flat out lies about how the CBT is that's being offered is increasing about the same as it has in previous CBAs, which is not true. And then he also made a statement about, I don't have the quote, but how the last 5 years in revenues have not been that great for teams. I mean, if that's the case, then let's see the evidence of it. They have not produced that to this point, and they will not be doing so because I do not. It has not been a difficult 5 years for the teams at all.
yeah. So I'm trying to on the competitive balance tax, we offered a significantly larger first year increase than in the last 2 agreements. Bearing in mind the competitive balance tax is the only mechanism in the agreement that protects some semblance of level playing field among clubs.
Which is, I strongly disagree with that
It's
statement.
laughable at best. What was the other part that you were trying to remember?
The part about the last 5 years have been difficult.
Uh, yeah, I remember him saying it, but I'm trying to figure out where it was in the salary, annual bonus pool.
Regardless, like
I love that we listened to our fans. The expanded playoffs of 14 teams is what they want. I'm pretty sure I'm on the record for wanting 10, but okay. I mean, I'm not the only fan, so like, sure. Oh, Well, so you know how I told you that the letter to the fans that they had posted was the direct thing that he said in his press conference? They actually did cut out one particular line. Um, it's that the last 5 years have been tough. That's the line they cut.
That makes sense. He probably should not have said that.
He should not have, because someone immediately reached out to Jeff Passan, who came up on ESPN as it ended, and said, if I remember right, COVID started about 2 years ago, not five. It's like, well, yeah, it's pretty damn accurate. So, yeah. So, from here, though, like, I don't know. I think the Players Association does have the next, they're the next offer. The owners did put out a pretty not substantial offer, a pretty thorough offer today. And so I don't think there's really much else that they haven't addressed in their offer. So I think it is on the Players Association. But I think it's a matter of timing. It sounds like the owners don't mind missing all of April. We watched them sit around for 42 days after implementing a lockout that they said was going to speed things up. So who knows it? We might not be able to get them in a room for 2 more weeks and get down to the last week to get things going by the time that they start losing money. Or this could all be over on Thursday. I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping Thursday. Fingers crossed. Don't have my hopes that high.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's all I've got to say on that very upsetting topic for the day. What do you got? Anything? Closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. Like hoping for baseball, but not optimistic that it's going to be happening anytime soon.
And honestly, I don't want the players to get in on an agreement that's just going to screw things up worse. If it takes time to get this thing right for them, let's do it. I mean, at this point, fans are already turned off from baseball that we're going to start getting turned off. Like, we're already blowing the thing up. Let's just tear it down and build it back better. I mean, it's kind of my stance. I can wait another month. I don't want to, but I can. I don't know what we're going to talk about here, but we'll figure it out. I got a trivia book. Let's do some trivia here just to close this thing out. What do you say we do 2 or 3 questions?
Sure.
All right. So the Chicago White Sox sell a sundae in a full-size batting helmet with how many scoops of ice cream? Is it 8, 10, 12, or 14?
I'm gonna say 8.
That is incorrect. It is 12.
Oh
12
my
scoops of
god.
ice cream. It is vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry ice cream, plus strawberry and chocolate sauce, bananas, whipped cream, and cherries. The whole thing weighs 3 pounds. All right. This one should be pretty easy for you. This is a Hawkism, if I remember correctly. Which corny expression refers to an easy fly ball?
Can of corn.
It is a can of corn. The options were a can of corn, corn husk, corn cob, and popcorn. And let's see. We'll see if you can get this one. Which manager led the Philadelphia Phillies to their first World Series win in 1980? Was it Buck Showalter, Dallas Green, Mike Scioscia, or Davey Johnson?
I'm gonna go with Mike Scioscia, but I don't know.
It was Dallas Green. I
Should've gone
saw a
with
whole
him.
bunch of really famous names and just read the question. Then I looked at the answer and went, I don't know that name, and looked back at the options, and there was one random guy. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. I think that's the best I got for ending this on a happy note.
Yeah, and we're gonna cancel tomorrow's episode of our NL East preview, and we will figure out what the schedule going forward is going to be, and let you guys know as soon as we can.
If you guys want to see us play some more games, let us know. We can. I think we can come up with some games if we need to. I think we've got a Jeopardy board in the making. Um, I would love to try Family Feud. So if anyone's interested in being part of a survey for a Family Feud, reach out to me on Facebook or Twitter at Getaway Day Pod. Make sure to follow us on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and subscribe to us on YouTube to make sure that you never miss an episode of us being sad about the CBA or happy about literally everything else baseball, because we absolutely love the sport and we sometimes hate ourselves for topics like this. But I honestly would rather rant about this for an hour than not talk baseball at all. So make sure to follow us there. You can follow us on, or you can join in on the conversation on our Discord server. And I think that is about it. So we will see you all possibly next week. Make sure to check the social media and we will let you know. Have a good one.